Ragged, close your door, please. Close your door, please.
Are you live? Yep, you are now.
Yeah, we are live. Perfect. If you need a drink, buddy, come and get one. All right. Just gonna wait for a couple people to show up. Got a friend here from another channel. Gonna do some chatting about what's going on and how things are being. So it'll be another chat with Randy from the Rough Bastards channel. So we'll give a couple minutes here and then we're gonna have a conversation. Interesting different perspectives because I'm up here north in Canada. He's down in Spokane, Washington area. So it gives us interesting
Hey, you said it
perspectives.
right.
Yeah, I got it right.
Right? Yeah, we got three folks watching.
Alrighty, so just give us a couple minutes and then get into it here. You were just saying in the meantime, Randy's just gone through my last video where I went through some pretty heavy biblical concepts, and he was just talking about it before. So if you wanted to, what were you saying about it? You really enjoyed it by the sounds of it.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just one of those Dallas videos that you just definitely download, save, back up, because it's something I'm going to listen to over and over. I got through it at least, I don't know, one and a half times, but I mean, just the language and how words are used, the spelling, and you know, it's pretty mind blowing because it truly is a whole different like emotion, like you said, or a ruling. It's or heaven and earth, being the law. It's pretty cool.
It's a total
Yeah,
different world, like when you have to slow down to see it for the first time. I've been researching this for quite some while. So for me, in my perspective, very it's been a very long time since I've forgotten what it looks like to not see that when we read it. So it'll be interesting to get some comments and have some good discussion and see what's going on in other people's minds about it, and also with what's kind of going on in the world.
it's probably 6 months ago, or maybe a little more, but one of those long conversations we had when we were talking about the court case, or how Satan was petitioning or whatever, and that was the first time, even though we've all heard of the law, under the law, and we're no longer under the law. I mean, you hear the law, but in that way, it just really kind of blew my mind.
Oh, being able to see how the law is a realistic. You have to
Yeah,
realistically approach the Bible as a realistic law. It's not just some magical thing out there.
yeah. Like, I mean, there's I ever since learning and reading about Job, I knew there were rules, boundaries probably that are set up, but it's pretty mind blowing. Yeah,
What I find really
that
interesting
and
right now going on is how we've been talking about for quite some time this whole uh, we've been looking at, and so this started back in 2020, and you were back there with me when 2019 ended, and we saw the big transition of all the narrative in the stories from like that was Donald Trump's impeachment time period, and the language of the Greek and the Clash of the Titans started rolling in, and now we've kind of settled into that, and I think there's a lot of that information that's been forgotten about because there was a lot of stuff that took place then that we're seeing unfold. Like back then is when I was explaining how Russia and China were going to be made the new two superpowers in the world, and we're starting to see that unfold now. Like Russia is now separating itself from the rest of the world's economy. China will go with them. Iran. We're starting to see these big separations, and it's pretty interesting because this is now leading into that famine period that we're also talking about. The dominoes are all falling, and we're also moving into the repercussion period of all the shots. So it's all actually starting to snowball. Unfortunately, like we've been talking about for quite some time. What's it like from your point of view from being in Spokane? Because like do you work in the city, right?
Well, I used to.
Yeah, well, but
Remember?
for better reasons.
I'm still not sure if I got fired or quit, but hey, um, it's really strange.
Oh yeah, just so you guys know, he was put to the fire. They told him if you don't take the shot, then you've got to walk. So he left. All seriousness. That takes a lot of you know when the time of testing comes, it takes a lot to be able to stand up and do the right thing. So that's where he's sitting now, and he's not walking away from a little job. He was the manager of a health facility, doing management work. So he was, in charge of people and admit like there was a lot to it. So he wasn't just walking away from a little thing here. This was a big deal. So I say, that was pretty, a hard decision, but I understand completely. My wife had to do it through the nursing, so it sucks, but it's where we are now. And Randy's in that position, so he's speaking from a pretty good position of authority of having to step down from that kind of thing. So just like to throw that in there. Anyway, you were gonna say.
Yeah. And I am going to make a video about why I really quit and why I really got fired, but that's for another day. But at this point, people have either totally adopted the new normal, meaning the masks, the social distancing, the boosters. I mean, they're down. I mean, get boosted. Yeah, like it's uh, and we're probably talking, going over the line for YouTube, so I don't want you to get a strike or anything. But I decided, a long time ago, like you said, back when we kind of saw how this was all coming together, and then the whole thing with Kobe and the Tisha Bob was that 2018 with the bridge, or where and the Gilbert Godfrey thing and all that. Was that 2018?
No, no, that was still 2019. That was all at the
That
Tisha
was.
B'Av event. Yeah, that because that was all connected to the
All right.
San Fran Bridge.
So, I mean, timeline, I guess it doesn't matter so much, but pretty soon, when you start being able to see through, separate, what I'm talking about, what's realistic and what isn't, because a lot of stuff that isn't real is really realistic. Um, you really start seeing it, and then you start being able to kind of see what's next, and then throw a little history, little dash of gematria and dates and this, and pretty soon you get it. They certainly do repeat the same script, I guess is what I'm saying. So it has. I knew we would be here, but I'm blown away that we're here. Does that make sense? Like,
Oh no, it makes total sense. I'm in the exact same boat because like we're still making these like with the whole new problem that's all surging, and I got to be very careful around this because I did get a strike the last time I talked about it, but with the AIDS uh, and the
uh-huh.
that whole new thing that's surging everywhere, like it's in the media everywhere, but not for what it is. So it's unreal to know that 2 years ago I was talking about that, and it's actually coming to be. And I'm actually seeing other people. Then this is a weird thing to experience. So 2 years ago, before anyone talked about this, I was talking about the whole AIDS coming up. And then it's happening. And now I'm seeing people stand up and say that this is just another part of the programming, that this is fake. Well, if this is just part of the programming and fake, why did I call it 2 years ago based upon medical information that led me to this conclusion? So it's given me a weird experience to start seeing how people are calling it fake and why they are, when I actually think it's based upon actual historical, like this is part of the progression of what they're working towards. So it's very interesting because I think we've reached a new point of existence in this world where the new normal is that there's always going to be layers of conspiracy in debate in the public forum now.
Dude,
So,
that's like mind blowing, but that is absolutely what we're told North Korea is and has been. What if that's a really cool place? I was just thinking that the other day. I mean, everything else is aligned. Maybe North Korea is really great, and you know, anyhow, that's
well,
a different
everybody's
rabbit
in their
hole. But
role, everybody's in their position. We all get our times of prosperity and then times of entrapment. Like the States just came out of a huge time of prosperity. Into China, depending on how you look at it, has its empires. Russia has it. Like there's this rotation, and that's what we're going through again. We're now entering into the second year, into the second summer, into this Clash of the Titans system. And for those of you who are listening that may have never heard about this, so 2 years ago, with Donald Trump's impeachment, we discovered this ritual that they were partaking on, which is a 10-year Clash of the Titans war, which comes from Greek mythology, and they had all these names wrapped around it, all these events tied into it, and that's what we're going through is the transfer of a kingdom into the hands of a new generation based upon the Greek mythological titanocracy, the battle of the Clash of the Titans. And so we've been going into this for 2 years, and we've been following the theme pretty heavy, and that's why the whole the Kraken, the release of the Kraken, was such a big deal throughout all of 2020. And we saw these kind of symbols going on. They
gosh,
even made Seattle's team called the Kraken. Like there was so much Kraken stuff. And we saw all the symbolism, and that's because we're now going through these phases, and every year is part of this plan, this 10-year play they're rolling out. And so that's part of what is interesting is how was I talking about this 2 years ago and it's taking place. And that's what's interesting, like I'm saying, is we're now in this weird world where everybody, it doesn't matter who they are, is debating about conspiracy. So I think the forum has been opened. There is more fake news and not really new news because the only news people get is, playing off of the fake news. So in reality, there's not really any whistleblowers from what we've understood. There's information leak, but that's to pump one side of the Hegelian dialectic over the other. So we're always being fed the information, and the people are always running with this information and coming up with theories now. And we have entered into a new mindset where everybody is either into conspiracies or they're completely against it and have a lot of opinions about it. Nobody has zero opinion about it now. It is front and center and normal. And now that opens the door for getting away with anything. And nobody knows anything anymore. Like it's to the point where if you haven't sat for the last 10 years researching this, you are not going to figure it out now. There is way too much garbage everywhere, and all the good sources have been removed.
yeah, it's. I mean, remember, it doesn't have to be true. It just has to be believed.
And that's the
And
whole point. That's their power,
everybody
right? Is
right
it's
now is
controlling the
believing.
narrative. That's their power.
Yes, yeah. I'm telling you, it's just simply like, I mean, throw this event up ahead of here, and then you're gonna, again, problem, reaction, solution. Uh,
Well, that was that trucker
and then
convoy whole situation that people bought into hook, line, and sinker, and I can't understand why. We've been expecting some kind of revolution. I have been talking about they are planting revolution seed after revolution seed for like a year. I've been calling out civil war. We're
yeah,
going into it, and we see it. We saw it last year at the States. It started with the little kerfuffle at the White House, the little bit of civil unrest. Now we saw it in Canada. We saw it in Kazakhstan. We're seeing it in the States. It's all boiling up. It's all building to exactly where we've been talking about it. And that's what's absolutely crazy that it is happening. And now we're at a position where this smudge of information is just so overwhelming. And the good, like I said, the good stuff being removed. Like I don't even know how anymore to get through to people because unless you know how to draw the images yourself, all you're getting is what they want you to have access to.
well, we don't know anything if we, they, in quotes, didn't want us to know it. we've had that discussion too. I mean,
They do have limits, and that's the
but
battle, right? Because that's the whole thing. That is what the schmoz is. It's we're in an info wars cloud to make fun of one guy, right? Like he came out, and that was the entire propaganda machine of his storm was to bring an info wars cloud, right? Like you didn't know when he opens his mouth what's true and what's not. Some turns out, some most is crap. Some turns out to be perfect. So like he's got a wide range. And now we live in that reality where everybody is an Alex Jones. Like everybody is now.
so true. Oh my goodness. And you're right. I mean, people, they're either on board with the narrative or they're somewhere, throwing up resistance or, rebelling.
And getting caught up
They're
in the
spooling their
propaganda
mouth
because we
under
are,
their nose or
yeah, saying, yeah, everyone's
funny
getting caught
deal.
up
You
in
know
the,
how old the man?
it's awesome delay. I was just
What's
saying,
that?
uh, I was just saying, yeah, because like the truth is, people are all getting caught up in the propaganda. And that was a big thing that I'm seeing now with this, the Russian war going on. Those whole thing is being so overblown and so obviously overblown and narrativized. Like this is pure propaganda that's being put in front of us. Like you can go on to a million different websites to find out all of a sudden everybody in the world knows the history about why this is happening, and everybody's got, a similar story, and everybody's being led to believe the same thing. But if you cross boundaries and borders, all of a sudden you hear completely opposite things being pumped into Russia and China. They have completely different stories being fed to them. We are being literally just bombarded with one storyline after one storyline, and people, for some reason, and this is where I get messed in my head, is they keep thinking the next event is somehow real.
Well,
So
I
this is a
mean,
big problem. Like we know that right from the beginning that it was a plan to get everybody stuck as much as they could. We didn't know to what degree it was being pushed or to what effect, and what we didn't know about it. So we watched it unfold. But in the end, most of the people folded and went with the plan, even though they all knew that there was never going to be a good thing, no matter if it was completely 100% fake or if there was something there. So it just like it's a weird. I was just saying it. You dropped out there. You back? Hello? Hello?
oh shit.
Okay, well there we go. He's back. Okay, so we just find ourselves in this weird situation now where anybody that we are approaching, like how, and I'd like to look to the crowd here, like get some comments, from the people watching, like how are we going to bridge this new gap because we've entered into a strange new world.
Dude, it's seriously, I don't know. It's like a sci-fi experiment. I just truly everybody believing a different lie, and it's.
Well, when you can
I
control
mean,
the people by pumping issue after, and this is where I don't know how we get through to people because we are sitting here talking to the awakened, to those who claim to have been somehow brought forward into, I am now knowing, I have been woken from this, I am, I can see this, I see. All these people think they're awake, yet they keep going from event to event believing that it's real. And that's what's mind blowing to me is somehow these people who have separated themselves from this thing are still fully participating in it. Like there are ways, I'm just going to say this, here's a little bit of a rant. You guys really want to make a difference in the world and stop participating. Get your money out of their banks. All they can do is with what we give them, we feed them money. When we put our money in their banks, they can do with it whatever they want. If everyone pulled their money out, the system stops working immediately. We don't participate. We can
so
trade
simple.
however well, and it is. And this is something I steal from Randy, and he says it, no one rules when no one obeys. And now we're not talking about anarchy in the sense of bedlam, but anarchy in the sense of truth and liberty and righteousness and respecting the honor and freedom of another man, and obviously woman in that context. So we're talking
Sure.
about a thing where it's a radical idea because the people who are propagandized into thinking that they're doing what they're doing is they ultimately all believe that they're somehow trying to get to peace. And the only peace you're going to get is when you stop participating on either the it's good or bad side. There is no choice because this is God's world and they're playing a game opposed to the reality of existence. And as long as you participate in it, it will continue.
You okay. Hey, what's going on here? I mean, if you've ever, herded, you know, livestock or move them into corral or anything like this, where you open the gate and you have these go here, whether the heifers go here and the steers go to the left or whatever it may be. It's exactly what's happening with this programming and this fracturing with our minds, with all these different spins on what our reality is.
Well, it's
It's
absolutely
crazy.
crazy and fascinating to have watched it happen for the past 2 years. Like, I bet you their mind jockeys are just like you know, out of their seats with excitement over the amount of data. Like, the human response to this experiment is unbelievable to me. Like, we got people halfway around the world that have never been connected to people driving trucks up to the fronts of their city halls. Like, it's crazy. All the way back to, Floyd George. Here you had a worldwide situation where you have George Floyd, and you got these people in the middle of a respiratory pandemic holding signs saying I can't breathe, and these people don't see it. It actually is
Well,
quite terrifying to be in the position we're in to realize that even the awake crowd is going along with the plan. They believe in this great awakening. They
I
believe they
know.
believe they're actually going to be led to somewhere good by this.
I know. And I just want to, okay, going back to the people that did participate that weren't in on it, with the Ottawa, whatever it was, protest, okay? First, to the people that did it with good intentions, my hat would be off, and I respect that they would stand up. Or I'm sure those are people that got arrested, thrown in jail, and their shit towed away, and now they can't get it out. Oops, okay, got to keep it clean. But um, it's so frustrating to see how. I mean, again, what's that dude's name? Lennon. It's the best way to control the opposition is to lead it, and that's what's constantly going on. Whatever the narrative is, or whatever the spin is. My goodness, I mean, imagine if you had a child from 5 to 11, and you just found out if they rolled up their sleeve, they've got a 12% resistance. I mean, what kind of mind game is that to the people that felt they were doing the right thing? So you are right. This is going to everybody. Nobody is important or cattle to the people that are,
Well, and I want to bring
behind the
perspective.
curtain.
I want to bring perspective to that too, because they don't want to wipe everybody out. That's not the plan. They want to. They actually believe that they're creating an evolutionary state for the human experience. They believe we are all a form of God. That God is everything and all things at the same time, and we are in a way creating ourselves to experience this experience for the sake of experience. And so they believe that they're actually bringing about an evolutionary change in the magnitude of our experience. I can't remember the exact same word, but it's basically experience and experience, just to stand there and watch it happen. So they want to see it get better from this whole everything needs to evolve state. And they don't want everyone to die off. They just don't care about the ones that aren't going to be able to save themselves because they're not worth it anyway. And so there's this big idea that they want to wipe out everyone. They don't want to wipe out everyone. They need, in order to be a king, you need to have servants to rule over. You can't be a
A big
god
idea.
if no one's worshiping you.
You know who said a big idea? we have a big idea. We have a real shot at this new world order, right? Holy cow. That's right. We're live. We're not just having a conversation. I just had a George H.W. Bush flashback, and I cannot find that video anywhere. If anybody in the chat can find that one where it was September 11th, I believe 1990. I think it was 11 years, before 2001, I believe.
Going
Throw it up in the chat.
now, one thing that I want to bring up, and it's kind of been bantered around in the chat a little bit, is we have to come we have to come to realize that God is in 100% control. This is not satanic plan takeover, Luciferian world takeover. That's not what this is. This is God's plan. This is God judging the world. This goes back to understanding and putting into perspective and the importance of truth, the importance of knowing the Bible and what it says and when it was talking about, so that we can understand. Because the Jesuit plan that is in place, that is causing the world to be pushed into this movement of everything is going to get to the point where we all become united into one and be in a one world system with a one world leader under a one world religion, which is the goal of the Jesuits, which is to hand the system back over into subjection under the papacy. Now, that in order to make that happen, they're pushing the end, they're trying to physically, literally, in sense, fulfill the book of Revelation so that they can present themselves as the rulers. Now, this is the biggest problem, is they've been perpetrating this for literally 500, almost 500 years. And in the 1800s, the plan was put into action after the Enlightenment era. And we actually see worldwide it start taking implemented, like in the governments, in the social structures, in the schooling systems, in the marriages. It all starts coming in. All the foreign doctrine, everything becomes a big deal in the 1800s. And we've been bombarded for 200 years in our culture worldwide to accept a coming event. And we're all going to be melded into this one coming event. And now we're being told that it's the Great Awakening, that this is a great revival of the human spirit, that truth is prevailing, and everybody is falling for it. Because if you don't know Jesus and have hope in this world and understand the position that we're in now, well, you're either going to fall for the Great Awakening and go with the occult version of the gospel, or you're going to go with the futurism version of the gospel, and you're going to be stuck waiting for this savior, and they're going to give them to you. But in order to get there, we have to go through hell first. And so that's what they're playing out, and they're going to present to us those who remain, those who make it through the transitional phases of their new system. Those who remain will be offered a place in their perfect kingdom, the golden cube. And that's what they're building towards. But people don't realize it doesn't matter what they're building towards. That's God's purpose for them in this world. And this is going to be hard for people to hear. Just as Rome was used by God to destroy and be the judgment of Israel, God is using this movement to destroy and move on those who are evil, those who have walked out of covenant with God, to bring about a new reformation that will bring about the truth about the historical placement of the Bible and what that means to us today. But in order for that to happen, this futurism judgment against the church needs to be dealt with, just as at the time of the Reformation, they believed for 1,500 years that faith came, that justification, the right to come before God and salvation was through works. Well, that's been radically changed from the last Reformation. That salvation comes through Jesus. So through that experience, that argumentative, that whole change of history that took place in the 1500s, we're seeing that redone now. And just as the Reformation in the past was a judgment of God for goodness, it had to tear down what was in place for that to happen. And we're going through that now. In order to tear down what's going on now, they have to tear down those who are participating in it. And that's the judgment of God, and that's what's taking place right now. This isn't a devil satanic world takeover. He's using that tool as the judgment against the people because that's the people he raised up in judgment, just as many times, like Babylon was used against Israel, the foreign entity, Babylon, the great I symbol of idolatry, the worst of the worst, the great symbol. And he actually had them enslaved to Babylon. And he actually called them the golden head. And he actually had a king of Babylon being spoken of as a good king. So it's really fascinating if we can come out of this place of judgment and come to realize that the Bible isn't what we've been taught, and we can get into now discussing the effects of why it's important. Because if we take a look at the Ukraine war and the Russian moving in there, every hot dog preacher, futurist that's out there is telling us that this means the end of Revelation, that this now is the Magog and Gog war, that this is what it's all been pointing to. But it hasn't. And if you know the truth, and this reformation that's happening at this exact second will disprove, once we go through this event, this will never be able to happen again. Once all this futurism garbage is wiped off the earth for the reason of the destruction it's causing, will never happen again. And the truth of it, once it's exposed, because of the great magnitude of destruction this is about to cause, will never be forgotten. It can't be. It won't be. Jesus' name has never been stricken. The doctrine of justification through faith has never been stricken. The knowledge of the history of the Hebrew people and their relationship with God and the proportion of their time, they will be put in their proper historical placement so that we will never again fall to this deception at a world scale. People forget when we're talking about the light, we're living in the kingdom of light. We're living in the covenant of light. God is bringing peace to the world. And in order to do that, you must remove evil. You must remove the darkness. As light moves into darkness, you are now seeing those things that were evil, that were once hidden from that darkness. So when light spreads, it reveals the shame of the darkness. And that's what we're experiencing now. And that shame is the darkness rebelling against the truth. It's trying to win. And that God knew it would, which provokes the clash of the light revealing darkness. That's goodness, because now we get to remove it. And once it's removed, it'll never happen again. We'll move on to a new layer of darkness that needs to be removed. Does that make sense?
Dude, that was a lot, but it does. And, what I'm wondering as far as what's going on now, where would you tie that in the Bible, keeping in mind with 70 AD and the events?
Well, we live in the new kingdom. There's a new way of being, which is we no longer need to come through the old covenant of Israel in order to have presence with God in truth and actually have a relationship with him. What it doesn't do is it doesn't change the fact that God before all of creation was the same way as he is now. So God always was the way he is the way he is, and always will be the way he is. So the important message I'm getting through in this message, trying to anyway, is that it doesn't matter what time we live in. The purpose and creation of that purpose that we live in still resides in every epoch, which is to have relationship with God and turn
Holy
that
cow.
wisdom and goodness into testimony to other people to spread it.
What you just said was a freaking huge golden boulder, dude. Because, okay, so God is infinite. He's always been, okay. So time is not even a factor. And so when you said it doesn't matter what time we're living in right now, it really doesn't matter to God. That's huge. That's okay. End the stream, man. I'm done.
No.
that is gold. Serious. I think it is.
Well, it's a big
And
deal for Christians or anybody who has this perspective that, when we look back at time through the golden eyes of the religion we've been fed, that there was this point of beginning, and from there, Adam and Eve, and we all have this battle now of, is that the beginning point? So to suggest that God has always dealt with people long before that in the same manner that he is today, it's mind blowing to people that God's mind has never been changed. And that's the point, is when God created humans in general, at the very dawn of however that came to be, I do believe that Genesis is a motif of creation. So I do believe that Genesis 1 is probably very factual in the matter in which God created all things in the beginning. However, I do believe that it was referring more to the creation of the covenant. But if we do believe and take a look that there was a physical point in which God snapped his fingers, spoke a word, whatever it was, there was a finite point. Then man came into being. And unfortunately, man just didn't want the relationship with God based upon truth. They just wanted to control the world the way they wanted to and put God into it the way they wanted to. So when God came into the world, he came into the world to deal with that. And that's what I think a lot of people forget, especially since we don't have the perspective of that God loves the world. For some reason, Christians say God loves the world. Like we quote John 3:16 all the time, for God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten son. Well, that was Adam. People forget Adam was referred to as the son of God. That's why Jesus tracks his lineage all the way back there in order to claim his lineage, because then he can also be the son of God, as in Luke 4 or Luke chapter 3. I do believe it is. Wherever it is at the end there, it actually does the genealogy in Luke and runs it down all the way to Jesus calling Adam the son of God. That's why there was the first Adam and the second Adam. When we take a look at these things and balance them and come to grips with what we have to deal with, it's not surprising that nobody understands this. And what blows me away the most out of all of this is how everybody thinks they understand it. So when we take a look back, and if we shift perspectives and we start seeing a different history where God loves every human, even though it says John 3:16, God so loved the world, we don't believe it. We believe God so loves the world for everyone who chooses to do what God says. No, God loves every single person, and that's the problem, is he created every person and they rejected him because it wasn't based on truth. So through Jesus, through this creation of this Adam, there was this infection, this invasion into our space. And it's been a war of truth ever since. And I don't think it's ever going to be different. The new kingdom and the new uh, heaven and earth, the new covenant, isn't about controlling those people. It never was. It never has been. God has never been into controlling people. He's never been into controlling you or I. Why do I love him? I love God, and I come to God because when I was on my own, in my weakest, when I was living the world the way I wanted to, it brought nothing. And then God spoke to me, brought me through what I went through, brought me to the place where I am, knowing that I don't live without anything that I actually truly enjoy in my life, without God doing what he has done in my life. My testimony is my relationship with God. That's why I do what I do, not because, there's rules, or not because of that. And that's the purpose of this. That's the whole problem, is people don't want to have to do what the truth is. And it's always been the problem. But God doesn't want to force them. He wants people to just come to him in relationship and end up loving him, like I'm learning to do. It's just about
so
submitting to the reality of what it is. Sorry, go ahead.
it is the 100% opposite of what we're being programmed to do right now. Whether it's, obeying the speed limit, using your turn signal, uh, wearing your mask, following the rules, doing this, doing that. Where God, truly, what you're saying is right. It's easier to follow rules than it is to really follow God when you think about it, because at least you got somebody who's got a plan for you, and maybe that's what's going on. Where with God, like you said, He doesn't set the rules up. It's between you and Him, and
Well, let's be fair,
it,
and this is something that I've had to come to grips with because I've given people a lot of credit and said, that, but I've also now have to learn to say in the same way, give a lot of people their own blame. The reality is God wants relationship with people, and that's a two-way road. It's not a go and sit down and learn this book or go down and do these acts of kindness and don't follow these laws. It's not about that. It's actually sitting down and spending time with God. Like actually he's a person. Like he's an actual personality. You talk to God, you interact with him, you share your life with him, you include him into everything that you do. He blesses you and brings things into your life in ways that you can't express in normal conversation without people now at this point in life calling you a wacko. So when you participate and walk in the things of God, you are still, was written in Jesus' time, in opposition to the things of the world. I think it's always been that way. It's always going to be that way. It's just going to have a different dress on. So if we want to look in antediluvian times, yeah, they had their stone, technology. Then we had the brass technology, the steel, the bronze. And we're moving into cyber technology now, right? We're moving into biotechnology now. The technology is just a different form of time, but the condition of the heart has never changed. So the message has
oh
never
man,
changed. There's no
there
need
you
for it to
go.
have.
Another golden boulder. Yeah, you're right, man. I'm with you 100%, and I believe everyone in the chat. Well, I don't know. I'm just saying, time really doesn't matter, but this is great. What you do with your time and spending time with God as a person, that's that's what that's what matters. That's
Well,
huge.
if we can agree on one thing, and that is, and everybody in the chat doesn't even matter on your doctrine. If we all believe that God exists, which at this point, if you don't believe God exists, I really don't know how to even talk to you anymore. It's just completely apparent. Like it's so self apparent. So if you're still struggling with if God is real or not, I'll leave you to that battle. I'm going to talk to those people who have crossed that world and realized the spiritual nature of our existence. And that being this, if God is real and he created all things and put us in it, did he not do it for himself to experience us? Like every human being has a longing that makes that transition into the spiritual world to connect with God, to be approved of God. We naturally drift that way, regardless of the programming of the era of the time. That is in man to do. We want to love our God. But are we going to do it of the way of Abel, or are we going to do it of the way of Cain? Are we going to do it the way he wants or the way we want? So I don't think the issue even comes down to even a lot of religion. It comes down to the state of our heart, which is, do I want to know God on his terms, which is truth and reality? Or do I need to control that? Do I need to determine what is good and what is evil? Do I need to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? Or do I trust God's tree of life? So we're put into this position and the time doesn't matter. So we can all cry about what time we're in. It doesn't matter. Where's your heart? If God is true and God is real and he wants relationship with you, which is just exactly the point of creation. Don't forget that. What is the point of creation? To experience creation. Why do parents have children? It's procreation, to create family, to create new experience, to the two becoming one. It's a union of love. The act is to be love, this bounding community. We are to love. We are to have community. We are to find those who love us and to love back. And that world is absolutely possible in every way. Now we understand why everything that we are taught is to put us into disharmony with each other. You find one community in the world that has harmony with one another, it doesn't matter what the outside world is doing, they're good. And that can be just a man and a woman living in a shack down by the river. That community might be all that it needs. But it's in us to want. And it starts at our core, and that core comes from our want to have relationship with Father. Because he put it in us, because that's his want for us. And that's where it all originates. It doesn't matter what time period, who you are, what gender you are, what belief you are. The goal of our existence is God created us as an expression of his love in order that we would have relationship with him. But if we don't want that, his love is so great that he will not force himself upon us, but will let us do what we want in the world with our time. All we're looking at with the covenants and the whole point of the Bible is the Bible was the lamp, the word of God. That was the truth written down on paper. But it became a curse because if you didn't live up to it, then the curse, the repercussions, which was death, came upon you. So within Jesus, the new covenant was there is nothing, and this gets rid of all of paganism, all of cult practices, all of psychic belief systems, all of the supernatural. It gets rid of it all. Why? Because in Jesus, he accomplished all things needed in order for you to have access to God one on one. God created you to have unlimited access to him as your Father, and he provided the way. Now, it's up to you to choose if you want to walk it or if you want to walk away. It's your free experience. Do with it what you will. But we're at war. And if you want to live the way you want, then you better wake up and realize that we're in a war, an information cloud, and without being aware, you will do exactly what somebody else wants if you aren't educated in freedom.
Fact. I'm just saying, and like I said, it really is easier to follow rules than think for yourself. And that's how we've been programmed. That's not how we should think. But, you know, how many people does it take in a crowd of 100 people that start walking one direction and then everybody starts following? It's not very many. It's like 20% or something like
Well,
that.
really, it only takes one
That's,
because one
that's
makes
just how
one
we've been
other.
conditioned.
Yeah, I was just saying, it just starts with one step creates one other person stepping, and it just convalesces from there. But what's interesting about it is it works in the exact opposite way. So think about that, guys. Really think about it. And as easy it is to lead the world astray and make us all sheep, it's just as easy to lead them back to reality.
That's true.
This is a war for the mind. It always has been, and it will never stop. Don't get caught up in this war with Russia. Don't get caught up with the freedom convoys. Be prepared. Like I've been saying for the past 2 years, get your food supplies. The shortages are coming hard and fast. Be prepared to grow your food. Be prepared to be without currency. There's places all over the world now that are currency free and live off of barter and trade because they will not join in the economic systems. This is the future for everyone. Be prepared that whatever you are buying is now your leash. If you're buying something, it's because you're dependent on it. If you need it, then you will pay for it. If you're paying for it and you don't need it, why are you buying it? This is not the time to start building a new stock of toys. This is the time to be building your freedom because the times of goodness, the times of plenty have come to an end. This is no longer on a, I don't care what anybody says, this is not the transition into the better times. That is not taking place. This whole Canada coming off of its Green Pass push, the UK coming off of its Green Pass push. This is all spreading, but it's all not doing anything. As much as they're all pushed off, all the places still have the restrictions on. The people are no still there. After 2 years of propaganda, people are still nervous. Some people are taking them
Well,
down,
I
some
mean,
people are not.
when you look at how we've been changed in the last 2 years, it's really just, I mean, man, they really pulled something off here. That's all I can say. That just blows my mind. Um,
And don't forget,
but
it's just the beginning. We're just at all number one. We're at the transitional point from phase one to phase two. And what you are not seeing is coming upon us quickly. So anyway, we're hitting about an hour here. I hate going off script because it just ends up sounding like rambling to me. So I want to say thank you very much, Randy, for sitting and chatting with me for an hour. Uh,
yeah, thanks for having me.
nah, this is good because I wanted to get some of those things off my chest. This whole the truther community just leading, the woke sheep from one fake semi-fake event to one fake semi-fake event, and they're just going along with it hook line and sinker. So just remember that there's media and alternative media. It's no such thing, it's all media. There's no such thing as alternative medicine. If it's medicine, it's medicine. There's no such thing as alternative medicine. It's just medicine, just like media. It's all media. Don't get caught up into it. You guys are a lot smarter than the average folk. That's why I love you, and I really appreciate the time you come and spend with me. So, to all those that have kind of stuck through this useless rambling and light venting, wherever you are, we hope you find you well. God bless.